The question of whether Black people were present in the Americas before Christopher Columbus's arrival in 1492 is a complex and often debated topic. It challenges conventional narratives of global exploration and early human migration. This subject delves into the intricate tapestry of ancient history, demanding careful consideration of various forms of evidence. There is currently no definitive, universally accepted proof that conclusively establishes a widespread pre-Columbian African presence. However, this absence of definitive proof does not negate the existence of intriguing clues. Several lines of evidence have emerged over time, prompting scholars to reconsider established historical timelines. These various pieces of evidence suggest a potential pre-Columbian presence, though their interpretation remains contentious. They invite us to explore possibilities beyond the traditionally accepted historical framework. The nature and extent of this potential presence, whether through isolated voyages or sustained contact, remain under active investigation and scholarly discussion. One of the most compelling and frequently cited areas of inquiry centers on the ancient Olmec civilization of Mesoamerica. Flourishing between approximately 1200 and 400 BCE, the Olmecs are considered a foundational culture for later Mesoamerican societies. Their artistic and architectural achievements are remarkable. Among their most iconic creations are the colossal heads, massive sculptures carved from basalt boulders. These monumental heads, some weighing many tons, depict human faces with distinctive features. They are a testament to the Olmecs' advanced artistic and engineering capabilities. Some scholars interpret the facial features on these colossal heads as distinctly African. They point to specific anatomical characteristics that appear to align with certain African phenotypes. This interpretation has fueled much of the discussion surrounding pre-Columbian African contact. Specific features often cited by proponents include broad noses and full lips, which they argue are not typical of indigenous Mesoamerican populations. These characteristics are seen as strong indicators of an external influence. The consistent portrayal of these features across multiple heads strengthens this argument for some researchers. Proponents of the pre-Columbian African presence theory argue that these facial representations are too striking to be coincidental. They suggest that the Olmec artists were depicting individuals they had encountered, implying an African presence in the region. This perspective posits a direct cultural or demographic link. However, this interpretation is vigorously contested by many other scholars and archaeologists. They offer alternative explanations for the observed facial features. The debate highlights the challenges of interpreting ancient art and iconography. An alternative explanation suggests that the features attributed to African ancestry are simply regional variations within indigenous populations. Mesoamerican peoples exhibited a wide range of physical characteristics, and these sculptures may reflect that diversity. Artistic stylization could also play a significant role in their appearance. The difficulty in establishing a definitive linkage between the Olmec heads and African populations stems from the ongoing debate about Olmec origins and cultural influences. The precise development of their civilization and their interactions with other groups are still subjects of intense study. Without clearer archaeological or genetic evidence, the interpretation remains speculative. Another intriguing area of investigation involves potential linguistic connections between Africa and the pre-Columbian Americas. Some researchers have explored similarities in vocabulary, grammar, and phonetics between certain African languages and indigenous American languages. These proposed parallels suggest a shared linguistic heritage or ancient contact. For instance, some scholars point to specific words or grammatical structures that appear to have cognates across the Atlantic. While such comparisons are often complex and require rigorous linguistic analysis, they open avenues for further research. The possibility of ancient linguistic diffusion is a fascinating concept. Beyond language, certain cultural practices have also been highlighted as potential indicators of pre-Columbian contact. One prominent example is the practice of pyramid building, which was common in both ancient Africa and the Americas. The construction of monumental step structures served significant religious and ceremonial purposes in both regions. Pyramid building was a widespread architectural phenomenon seen in ancient Egypt, Nubia, and various Mesoamerican civilizations like the Maya and Aztecs. The structural similarities and functional roles of these pyramids have led some to suggest a shared cultural influence. This parallel raises questions about independent invention versus cultural transmission. A strong counter-argument posits that these similarities can be attributed to independent development. Human societies, when faced with similar environmental or social challenges, may independently arrive at similar solutions or cultural expressions. The concept of convergent evolution applies to cultural practices as well as biology. Furthermore, an alternative explanation for any observed similarities could be diffusion through other means, such as trade routes across the Atlantic. While direct African voyages are debated, the possibility of indirect contact or the transmission of ideas through intermediate cultures cannot be entirely dismissed. Ancient maritime capabilities were more advanced than often assumed. Genetic studies offer another powerful avenue for exploring the possibility of pre-Columbian African presence. Advances in DNA analysis allow researchers to trace ancestral lineages and population movements over vast periods. This scientific approach provides a different lens through which to examine historical questions. Some genetic studies have indeed suggested the presence of African genetic markers in pre-Columbian populations in the Americas. These findings, often based on mitochondrial DNA or Y chromosome analysis, indicate a potential genetic contribution from African lineages. Such discoveries warrant careful scrutiny and further investigation. However, the results from these studies are often inconclusive and subject to varying interpretations. The complexity of ancient DNA analysis means that findings must be contextualized within broader genetic landscapes. Small sample sizes or the presence of modern contamination can significantly impact results. The complexities of genetic analysis include the potential for contamination from modern DNA, which can skew ancient genetic profiles. Researchers must employ stringent protocols to ensure the integrity of ancient samples. Distinguishing between ancient and modern genetic signals is a significant challenge. Furthermore, tracing ancient migrations through genetic data is inherently difficult. Genetic drift, population bottlenecks, and subsequent migrations can obscure original ancestral signals. Reconstructing precise timelines and routes of ancient movements requires sophisticated statistical models and extensive comparative data. The challenge lies in drawing definitive conclusions from genetic data, especially when dealing with ancient populations. While genetic markers can indicate ancestry, they do not always specify the exact timing or nature of contact. More comprehensive and robust studies are needed to solidify any claims of pre-Columbian African genetic contributions. Historical accounts and indigenous oral traditions provide additional, though often less concrete, evidence for pre-Columbian African contact. These narratives, while valuable, require careful critical analysis due to their subjective nature and potential for embellishment or misinterpretation over time. They offer glimpses into past perceptions and encounters. Some historical texts, particularly those written by early Spanish conquistadors and chroniclers, mention encounters with Black people in the Americas. For example, accounts from figures like Vasco Núñez de Balboa describe seeing people of African descent in parts of Panama. These reports, though often brief, raise intriguing questions about their origins. Indigenous oral traditions from various American cultures also speak of encounters with people who may have been of African descent. These stories, passed down through generations, sometimes describe visitors from across the sea with distinct physical characteristics. Such narratives, while not scientific proof, contribute to the broader tapestry of historical inquiry. A significant limitation of these accounts is their inherent subjectivity and potential for bias. European chroniclers often viewed indigenous populations through a colonial lens, and their descriptions might have been influenced by existing prejudices or misunderstandings. Oral traditions, while culturally rich, can evolve and change over centuries. The difficulty lies in verifying the accuracy of these historical and oral accounts. Without corroborating archaeological or genetic evidence, it is challenging to distinguish between factual observations, cultural myths, or misinterpretations. Scholars must carefully weigh these narratives against other forms of evidence. The evidence for a pre-Columbian African presence in the Americas is undeniably intriguing, yet it remains largely circumstantial. The various clues, from the enigmatic Olmec colossal heads to proposed linguistic parallels, genetic markers, and historical accounts, collectively paint a picture of possibility rather than certainty. Each piece of evidence, when examined in isolation, presents significant interpretive challenges. The clues derived from the Olmec heads, while visually striking, do not provide conclusive proof of African contact. Similarly, linguistic similarities, genetic studies, and historical accounts, while thought-provoking, do not yet offer the definitive, universally accepted evidence required to rewrite established historical narratives. The scientific and historical communities continue to debate their significance. Therefore, further comprehensive research is essential to advance our understanding of this complex topic. This includes more extensive archaeological investigations across the Americas and Africa, seeking direct evidence of contact or shared cultural practices. Advanced genetic analysis, utilizing larger and more diverse ancient DNA samples, could provide clearer insights into population movements. A deeper interdisciplinary understanding of pre-Columbian cultures, their maritime capabilities, and their potential interactions with distant lands is also crucial. By combining insights from archaeology, genetics, linguistics, and historical studies, we can hope to shed more light on the fascinating question of pre-Columbian African presence in the Americas. The journey to uncover these ancient connections continues.